G'day guys, it's Radar here. Today we're going to be going over the basics of iRacing. First off, I'm in the HPD at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Just cutting some laps so you guys aren't bored to death. But basically we're going to be going over all your on-screen HUD display by default and the graphical settings and all that other stuff. So we'll start off with the on-screen displays. And we'll start off in the bottom right corner. So at the moment there's a lap time screen. Now, these are the most important screens in iRacing when you're driving. There are, I believe, 12. We'll go through and we'll name each one off. But right now, these are called the black boxes. Now, at the moment, I've got the lap timing black box up. Now, this displays what lap you're on, the total time of the session, or if you're in a time race, the current time, the time remaining. It displays me that the current lap time, your previous lap time, and your best lap. Now, in a race session, this will also display the car ahead and the car behind at the last sprint timing. This is useful for practice sessions just to see what your best lap is and how long you've been in the session, but in a race, I don't really use it because it's not live, not real-time data that's being fed to you in regards to the position of other cars. But other than that, it's okay. So we'll go to the second black box, which is the standings. Now this is basically what it says, the standings. List the cars in the session, what lap time they're doing, if it's practice or qualifying, and what position they're in, as well as which class. Now, if you're in a multi-class race, you can press whatever button you have bound for left and right, or increase, decrease value, and that'll cycle between the classes. Now, at the moment, there's only one class, so you're not going to see it. But in a race, this will also have, at the last split, the distance between the leader and the car behind, or your car if you're behind him. So if you were in second and you were 12 seconds behind the leader, it would be leader's name, and then second your name at minus 12 seconds. So the third back box is probably the most useful, which is the relative timing screen. This one displays real-time information as to the gap between your fellow competitors on track. This is especially useful for multi-class racing, as it lets you know exactly how far ahead or behind a car is. It's used for all sorts of racing. It's good in practice sessions or qualifying sessions to not trip over anyone, so you know exactly where they are on the track in regards to space from you. It also displays, which is not now, in the bottom left hand corner, the lap you're on, and on the bottom right of this box as well, your last lap time. Next black box is the fuel. Now this is only used for pit stops. It just gives you how much fuel you want to add, so you can adjust this. You can even deselect it entirely. Now if you're running a closed cockpit car, like a GT car or something along those lines, you can also have the option at the bottom to do a windshield tear off. This just essentially cleans the windshield, gets rid of all the dirt and crap that's on it if you're doing a long run, and it's very useful if you want to be able to see clearly again. In my previous video you would have seen all the dirt and grit on the windscreen, and that's what that's used for, to remove that. The next box is tyres. This lets you change the pressures of the tyres on the next pit stop, as well as the option to replace the tyre or not. Pretty self-explanatory there. We'll go on to the next one. Next one is tyre info. Now this black box I rarely touch. This only displays tyre data from your last pit stop, so the last set of tyres that came with your car. And so we'll look at the left front tyre. Along the top you have temperatures, outer, middle, inner. So this gives you the temperature of the outer edge of the tyre, the middle of the tyre, and the inner edge of the tyre. Now because I haven't pitted, it's just blank data, the data that they give me when they put the tyres on. So the 65 degrees Celsius on outer, middle, and inner. And underneath that you've got a percentage. That's how much tyre wear is remaining on the car. On the tyre, not on the car. So because they were fresh tyres when they're chucked on, they're 100%. Next black box is pit stop adjustments. This isn't always available for every car, but for the HPD there is an adjustment for the power steering assist. But essentially this is adjustments that can only be made in a pit stop scenario. Oval cars like your Gen 6 stock car will have a lot of adjustments for this, but these are only done at pit stops. Next black box is the in-car adjustments. These are for the driver to fiddle with as he drives around. So for this car you've got the brake bias and the fuel dial setting. These differ from car to car, but the most common one will be a brake bias setting. So the brake bias adjusts, so I'm giving it more forward bias right now, and then I'm just winding it to the rear. So this just lets you change the brake bias on the fly. And the fuel dial settings let you change the fuel mixture. But that varies from car to car. Sometimes you'll have anti-roll bar settings, various other things. The graphics adjustment box. This is the last box in the series. I can't remember, I've lost count, but This one lets you adjust your mirrors, your field of view, how up or down your view is, and also the force feedback strength. So the strength of the feedback coming through your wheel. So I'm adjusting the field of view back here now, bring it back in closer. Try and do this on a straight bit. I'm adjusting the right hand side mirror, giving it more yaw and more pitch. So you don't really want to do that on a racetrack, you do it when you stop in the pits, lets you adjust your mirrors. So next up we'll move to the bottom left hand corner of the screen. Right now you'll see big number 3, speed underneath that, 3 bars and a steering wheel. This is essentially the telemetry box. So you've got the gear number you're in, is the big red, yellow number. Underneath that is your speed. And the 3 bars represent, so right now I'm on the throttle, that's the green bar, red is the brake, and blue is the clutch. And the steering wheel is just how much steering wheel rotation you've got at the moment. Above that relates to the big red bar in the middle of my screen right now, is the relative timing data. So this is related to what sort of, so at the moment it's to my all-time best lap. This can be cycled through to all-time optimal lap, optimal sector, session best lap, session optimal lap, and session optimal sector. Now obviously the bar will be red when you're underneath your lap time, and it will go green when you're above it. It will also fade between red and green depending on if you're improving through that section of the track. So if I was to go really fast and I was to go as quick as my all-time best lap time from here out, it would start to fade to green as I would close in on my ultimate time. Now we're moving up to the center of the screen, which is the virtual mirror. That'll be explained later. We'll go up to the top right of the screen now, and you have a box with 5 bars in it. At the top you just got your frames per second, and the first 4 bars are all to do with connection. The bottom one is the force feedback. As you see, as I turn the wheel, that bar increases. It even goes orange as I get towards, as more force is exerted, and you want to avoid that going red as much as possible, at all really. I'll explain later on how to avoid that going red. So we'll just jump back, quick break, jump back into the pits, and we'll go through some of the settings. See you soon. Okay, so we're back in the pits now, and we're going to open up the options. And this is the first screen you get, and it's called Drive. So we'll start working our way down the left hand side. You've got your steering section, so you've got the wheel range, which is the range of your wheel itself, and then the map range. Now this is the range at which the wheel will be mapped in-game. So the wheel I've got, the Driving Force GT, goes up to 900 degrees of rotation, which is what the wheel's set to. The map range is the in-game setting, and it will go to 900 degrees of rotation. Now in iRacing, you always want to go to 900 because the sim itself will lock off the steering at the real life limit for the car. Next up is brakes. This is all to do with your brake pedal. Now there are 2 types of brake pedals you can use. There's a potentiometer and a linear pressure sensing pedal. Potentiometers are pedals where you push, the further you push the pedal, the more brake pressure is applied, and load cells are basically the more load you push on the pedal, the more brakes are applied. Now if you have a load cell pedal, you want to set this to 0. If you have a potentiometer pedal, as it says in the suggestion box, 1.6 to 2.0. Next up is force feedback. This is probably one of the more important things. It's what you feel through the wheel. It's your connection to the game. So obviously enable force feedback. Linear mode, just use it in iRacing. It makes it better, just use it. I don't even know what was unchecked before. Strength. Now this all has to do with that force feedback bar I mentioned earlier. You want to get this to the point where in the high speed turns, or in a turn where you're putting a lot of steering lock, you're not getting in the red zone, and that is when you're getting force feedback clipping. So you want to set this, I've got this to 9.6, don't use that for every car, it depends very much car to car, but you want to have it so that you're not going into that clipping zone when you're in just a little bit of a turn. So you want to be putting in a lot of load before it clips, if it clips at all. You don't want to be kind of just doing little turns and it's clipping and going nuts. And you also don't want the wheel to feel like you're moving a brick wall. Damping, now this just softens out the force feedback, so it dampens it out, lessens the effect. Set this to 0, I mean then you're getting this to the raw force feedback. The minimum force is the minimum force that the wheel will exert at all times. Gearbox, unless you have like a G27 or a G25 or whatever, or one that has a sequential gear shifter with the wheel, this will always be sequential. It'll be in the binding settings that you can make it H pattern, but don't worry about that. Sequential gearbox, basically up and down the gears. touch and mouse driving, just don't even worry about them unless you're using, well, don't even worry about them, you shouldn't be playing it with touch or anything. Custom controls for this car, that's all up to you. I mean, because this is paddle shifters, I have it bound to the pedals, so custom controls rather than using sequential. Control assignments, so these are just a few of the control assignments. So you enter, exit, or tow car. This is just basically your reset button to bring you back to the pits real quick. And look left and right, obviously look left and right. Animate transition, just a matter of preference. Now the driving aids. In this car the auto blip sets itself, but as you go up, just set everything to none. So just so you're getting the raw driving experience. Driving lane, brake assist, throttle assist. You really shouldn't be playing this game if you need them, so leave them unchecked. The driving screen. Now this is all to do with what I was talking about before. So your frame rate meter, which was the box in the top right corner. Driving controls in the bottom left. Radio box was just above that, which I didn't go over, but that just displays what radio you're on. And black boxes were the big ones in the bottom right. Leave all those on, and if you have a G27 or a Fanatec wheel, you can change this. I just leave it on, doesn't matter for me. Now we go to options. Here you check what units you used, English or metric. I'm in Australia, so use metric units, that's kilometers per hour, degrees Celsius, whereas metric is miles per hour in Fahrenheit. Split time data, so that was a big red bar across the middle of the screen, so this will decide which default one to show, and the reference card. The reference card is just the ghost car, basically, that will be shown in test sessions, and the buttons you bind those to. Text chat, do whatever you want with this. It's just a text chat across the top when you're in the race, so you want to show them while you're driving, or any system messages from the sim itself. And then your quick chat macros, all up to you what you want to put. You can edit them, yay, whatever. I never use these, so it doesn't bother me, but it's all up to personal preference. Next up we got graphics. Now this is probably where the most can happen in the sim. So obviously you've got your monitor resolution, interface zoom, so leave this at 100. Number of screens, you can have 1 or 3. I only have 1 screen, so obviously on 1. We'll go to the right here, you've got your field of view. Now this is probably one of the most important graphical changes you can make within the sim itself. This determines effectively how close or how far away you are from the steering wheel of the car, or how just to the edge of the car. So, as I showed before, I was going back and forth through the field of view, that adjusts it, and I'll do a little thing on field of view later. You got your calculator, so you monitor width including the bezel, which is the little strip outside the screen itself. Your visible width excluding the bezel, which is actually the screen itself. Your viewing distance, so from where you sit to the screen. Now the angle between center and side screens is just for a triple screen setup. And then the calculator will give you your field of view. And you can change the units to inches or millimeters. Performance, I've got most things set to high. I mean, my computer's not that spectacular, but iRacing is not that heavy on your resources. So there is a thread on the iRacing forums as well to maximize the performance for whatever brand of graphic card you've got. So I've got an ATI, so this is optimized for an ATI card. So you go high detail. It's all up to personal preference and system performance, shall we say. And this one shows steering wheel. You can hide the steering wheel or show the driver's arms. Just so the driver's arms don't go past a full 90-degree left turn or a right turn. So if you've got the steering wheel on and you want to see exactly how far you're turning, it's kind of off-putting with the arms on. They kind of stop. Virtual mirror, which was in the top of the screen. This sets the field of view for the virtual mirror and turns it on. I run a widest field of view for the mirror just to give me that bit more view at the back of the car. Cockpit mirrors, personal preference, but I would highly recommend putting them on. Just that little bit of extra immersion in the sim. High detail in mirrors, check that. Means the cars don't appear like boxes, they actually look like cars. Headlights on track, this is only really needed for night races, but you've also got the GT cars for Prototype GT have their headlights on, so this will just show the headlights. This far terrain, all up to system, so the rest of these are all just up to the system performance of your computer. And hide car number while testing, so you can just hide the car number. This is good for custom paint skins. So moving on to down the bottom here, you've also got your GPU video memory. So this is the memory that your graphics card has, and your max system memory. So that's your RAM. So I've got that set up because I've got 8 gigs of RAM, and I've left that in the middle despite having 2 GB memory card, graphics card. Sorry, I left it in the middle there. We're going to replay now. This is essentially your graphics options for when you watch a replay. Often so you can dumb down your replay settings if you want to record and play them back later, so that you're not I don't know why you want to dumb down your replay settings. If you can play at that setting, obviously you can watch replay that setting, but it's up to you. Same options, up to personal preference. Next up is sound. So here up top you got your simulation, you've got what device is going through, and surround sound. Depends on what you're using. Sound levels, personal preference. Do you want to hear lots of engine noise? Crank that right up. Turn that back to where it was. It's all up to what you want. And the spotter. This is a very handy tool. So at iEnable spotter, give you this. The device you'll play back through, how you display it, voice only, text only, or voice and text. Just how chatty he is. Now I haven't played with this on low or medium before, but I know when he's on high he will talk a fair bit. He'll tell you when there's a car spun around the corner, there's a lap car ahead, car left or right, inside, outside, what lap time. You can turn lap time reporting off. But he's fairly chatty and it's a good bit of information. I like having that in my ear most of the time. And then your spotter pack. The default bloke sounds Australian, TJ and Steve, a bit more American, sounds a bit nicer. Report lap times, so this means whenever you cross the start finish line, he will blurt out the lap time that you just ran. When you're running ovals, I turn this off because I don't want to keep hearing a 22.4 or 22.2, just random numbers spat out. But on the road course I might run it, depends on how I feel. Report laps as time or as speed. I leave it as time because I'm normal. As speed I don't get that at all, but whatever. And then your buttons make him louder, quieter. Toggle report laps, so I have to push a button if I want to hear him or not. And then announce leader at start finish line. I just leave it off. I don't even know. I never tried it, never used it. Voice chat. This is your in-game chat. So enable voice chat. Tick that if you want to. You can disable it while you're driving. Sometimes I'm tempted to do this because people talk too much, but it's up to you. Muted, just mute it all. Playback device, so what's going to come through for the sound. Your microphone, the notification size. If it's small, it just pops up in the bottom of the screen. If it's large, it's a kind of bigger icon, more centralized. And then your controls: push to talk, louder, quieter, mute a driver, next channel, and previous channel. That's all for the radio. So you have your driver radio, your team, private, and club radio. Next up, controls. There's a lot of controls here, but you don't need to really bind all of them. I've got my ignition and starter keys. You rarely touch those in iRacing. Your pit lane speed limiter, that's basically essential. You can have a brake bias increase and decrease, or you can just go to the black box for it. And you got more controls here. Basically these things can all just be set through the in-car adjustment screen. Text chat, really left those as default, but you can change them as you feel. The black box controls are what's really important. So you've got your next and your back. I've got these bound to the two buttons, like right where my thumbs are, so I can just go left and right pretty quick. So you've got 9 black boxes, so you've got the F buttons do the rest of it for you. Now the select, next, previous and increment controls are very important. You should really have these bound to your wheel as much as possible. It's just an ease of efficiency if you want to make a quick pit stop. So you select next control, basically just cycle through, increment, make it bigger, smaller, or toggle the selection. So this is for saying you want the tyres changed or not. Replay controls, just control your replay. It's all up to you. So that's basically it for the basic settings of iRacing. I'll be back in a sec and we'll go through what the field of view does. See you soon. Alright, so we're going to turn some laps now just to show you what the field of view does. So I'm running my stock standard field of view of 70 degrees. The field of view is basically is an essential thing to set up. It should represent what's happening where you are placed in the world in the car. So you should be seeing what you're looking at should be represented in front of you to a certain extent. Field of view helps with precision, and it also eliminates all of that rush, that uncontrollability when you get up to high speed. And I'll show you in a sec. So we're just going to turn relatively fast. I'll just do a sort of 50% speed lap at my field of view, just to show you how a decreased field of view on a single monitor screen helps with precision a bit. I mean, on a single monitor, a decreased field of view can feel very uncomfortable. My calculated field of view is actually uncomfortable for me, so I wound it back a few degrees, just so I can see a bit more, because when you wind it in, you're staring at the dials. There's nothing, you can't really see much out the front of the car. Whoa. So the closed-in field of view means that you're seeing less, but what you're seeing is what you need, as such, if that makes any sense. You can be more precise with your car placement. Like, I know exactly where my right wheel is. I'm not thinking, oh, is that where it is? I know exactly where my left wheel is too. When you've been working with a field of view for a while, you actually begin to feel where parts of the car are in the sim. So you can place it, well, precisely where you want it. Which is a really good thing with close racing. You know where the front of the car is because it should be representative to the way you're sitting as well. So we're going to, on the straight, we'll wind the field of view back to, I don't know, something where we, there you go, we can see the mirror. So 100 degrees, we'll go with that. Now if you look back, it looks like I'm going so much faster right now. Everything's just rushing on by. It actually feels rather off-putting right now. I mean, if you're running a triple screen setup, this would feel normal for you because everything would be displayed in such a way, but you wouldn't be so zoomed out. So effectively, by increasing your field of view, you're getting the visual range of a triple screen setup or a single screen, which sacrifices different things. So if you notice with the 70-degree field of view, it looked like I was going a little bit slower than right now. I even feel like I'm going faster, but I'm not. I'm actually going much slower. See, everything just feels out of place. I mean, I can see exactly where the front wheels are, but I don't have that feeling as to where the front of the car is. So if I want to get close to someone, I'm not going to have all this confidence in that. Is that where the front of my car is, or am I going to hit them soon? Which in those tight restart situations, especially around this track, where there's traffic everywhere, you want to have that confidence to know exactly where parts of the car are, and that you will be clear if you try that semi-risky move. So we'll just finish off this lap with this insane field of view. And we'll wind it back into something that some would see uncomfortable. So this is 70 degrees. You can see I'm getting way closer. We'll go to 50. So that is uncomfortably close for me, and probably for many people. It's off-putting. You can't see much. Like, you're basically staring out. It limits your field. It limits your peripheral vision. You don't have much awareness as to what's going on here, and that's when you need that virtual mirror. But you see, I can feel. I already feel stuffed up. See, what happens when you change your field of view? You're just not quite used to the car, and I'm going to hit the wall. It's alright. Just back it, or not. Looks like we'll reset and we'll start again. So I can see where the front. I basically know exactly where the front of my car is. It's basically right in front of my face. That's how close I am to it right now. But I won't know what's coming on my left-hand side. Like, if I wanted to get side-by-side with someone, I won't be able to see their car as much as I would if I was back at 70 degrees, or even just a little bit further, like 5 more degrees. We'll add 5 more degrees to it. You already see heaps more. Add 5 more degrees. It's getting better and better, and I feel more comfortable with this. So the general premise of it is, get your field of view right, so that you know where parts of your car are, so when you want to get close to someone, you're not going to have that edginess of, am I going to run on the back of them? You're not going to just clamber over curbs. So it's saying their eye distance, that's how far away. So I haven't played this before, so I won't comment on that. Yeah, this just looks odd. I feel like Gadget Man right now. I'm sitting so far back from my car. So we'll come to the pits. So that should be the basics you need to know if you're starting off in iRacing, want to buy it, or if you haven't got it right yet. Even if you're an experienced iRacing campaigner and you haven't got some of these basics in pat, there you go. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope it makes you a better iRacer. See you on the flip side.